Bring into the fore some of the more technological aspects, that influence our lives, spheres of lives, whether we like it or not. And that is the journey that led towards us conceptualizing the whole question of big data and artificial intelligence with respect to how it can influence Kenyan electoral processes. And I heard again, by show of hands, who has heard of the word artificial intelligence? By show of hands? So I think we are in a very average room. And who has heard of big data? Not data only, but big one. Big data? Yeah, big data is even fewer, so I think our panelists have their work cut out for them. But we are interested in this question because personally, I use AI mostly to do research, but professionally, I'm interested in how AI influences or shapes our spheres of lives in different respects, whether it is in health, environment, and so on and so forth. So today we have a very distinguished panel, and we are going to benefit from them immensely because it is not often that you get a room full of these experts in one sitting together to demystify and see what this means for us first as citizens, and then for us as a nation, and key processes that concern us, such as that on election. So without further ado, I'm going to give my distinguished panelists 1 minute to introduce themselves. I'll start with George Nyongesa, who will briefly introduce himself. George?
Okay. Good morning. Names, George Nyongesa. I'm a lecturer here at the University of Nairobi, and I'm pleased to meet all of you. I'll be talking about ethics of AI, or AI ethics.
Hello, everyone. My name is James Reed Muindi, and I'm the co-founder of a software development firm called Zynamis with two amazing colleagues, Tracy Mwangi and Chris Kivaze. We help build solutions for the public, for Kenyans, and I'm excited to be here. And I'll be talking about the impact that AI can have in elections, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, as they say. Nice to be here.
A data company, and our focus is building products that leverage on impact and, to a good extent, drive out civic engagement in that sense. For me, most of it will be alignment towards how data incorporates your everyday interactions, and to an extent, the intersection between technology and society, how that too gets to integrate. So thank you, and looking forward to an amazing conversations and also having to interact with you as well.
Great. Robin, while you still have the mic, I know you've done a lot in these spheres in terms of research, data, and I also know you from more journalistic background. The work of a journalist is to educate people, and also the work of a professor or a lecturer. So would you take some time to tell us what artificial intelligence and big data is for the purpose of our audience?
That's interesting. So I think being in a technical space, there's usually a lot of assumptions about what these two things can mean. How I could simplify it would be, let me start with big data, because it also feeds towards what AI will be about. Data to the lay would be like the things that describe you, for example. It could be your interactions on Facebook. It can be who your friends are. It can be what you searched on Google. It can be the recommendations or the pages that you liked on Instagram. So once you have those, let me call them data points, when you come now to the space where it's about big data, so now this incorporates a huge volume, a volume in the sense that this could be about healthcare, for example, about a certain demographic in a sense. So that it's not that technical. I'll just say it's a huge amount of information that can be consolidated in a sense that will be understandable to computers. And about AI, for those who might not necessarily have a good handle of it, AI in a simple term would be programs that have been, that are running on algorithms that mimic the human element. So some of these interactions that you have online, it can be, for example, you're chatting, you have a chat with what looks like a human at the end of it. At the core itself, it might not necessarily be another human, but it's been programmed in a way that it relates to what you'd typically be asking about, and that, in a way, I feel is a way that I can simplify it in a sense. I don't know.
Thank you so much, Robin. George, anything to add onto that?
I think my colleague has just done a good job. The best way to look at things is that human beings will consume information. When you're born, you consume information from your senses, the 5 senses. That's what God gave you as a way of being able to consume information. You consume information from your environment through your 5 senses. Now, when we create something else that's like us, it also consumes information. Now, we human beings can consume a lot of information. So for example, you could be itching, at the same time you're hungry, at the same time you miss your mother. All that's information that your AI or your natural intelligence called the brain is processing. So we can mimic that and create something else by that understanding, and that thing will be technology. We have many technology, including a knife. A knife in the kitchen is a technology. Helps us to cut things. Otherwise, we will tie it with our hands. At advanced level, sophisticated level, previously we were hunters and gatherers as human beings. Now we are more sophisticated. So we are creating more sophisticated technologies beyond a stone, beyond a spear, a knife. Now we are creating technology called AI. The AI is just mimicking us, or rather pretending to be us, to consume information in a rather, as my colleague has said, huge volume. While you can process, you concentrate very shortly, in a very short span of time, the AI can do that in a very rapid and over a long time. And so the best way to think of big data is big information. And why is it big? Because it's coming in large volumes. Why is that important? It can be processed so fast. And that's what he's talking about. The artificial intelligence is just recreating ourselves in a way that other things can do for us things. So we can create a human being that we call a robot, which can pick a knife, cut, or create even a better knife. And that's, now we are in the area of AI and robotics. So all that we'll be talking about is technology. The seat you're sitting on is a technology. The clothing you have is a technology. The shoes. If you're wearing eyeglasses, those are technology. But now we have advanced. We have more sophisticated technologies. And as my colleague had said, technology helps us to understand certain spheres of our life. So for example, we have social space. In social space, we meet and interact. In that interaction, some of us date. What technology does there? We have WhatsApp. It helps us to socialize. In economics, we also need technology. Calculator is a technology. It helps us to type our numbers quickly. In politics, we need technology. Initial technology in politics was to fight. The strong man would rule the rest. Then over time, we progressed and moved to the level where we vote for the best amongst us. That's just technology. In that voting, sometimes we need other more advanced technology. And then now you will see my colleagues here talking about how we are using AI and big data in the area of politics, in the area of governance. So basically that's what I can say for now, and allow my colleagues also to contribute.
Thank you so much, George, for that. And I think now for the benefit of us pillars, but for the sake of our discussion today, we are mostly interested in how it might impact electoral processes in Kenya. And we just recently had an election here. So by show of hands, how many voted in the last elections? Okay, great. So I think we have an equally politically active or civically active audience. And I want to bring in James at this point to tell us why we should be concerned about artificial intelligence and big data in relation to elections. Why should it concern us as citizens? James?
Thank you very much. I think, as my colleagues have put it, when you look at artificial intelligence, you always look at it from how the brain works. That's, I think, a very good example. And think of it as a machine with a brain. And the same way you're able to smell, you're able to hear, you're able to taste, those are like the data points or where information comes from that goes to the brain. So in the same approach as well, artificial intelligence or AI, as you'll get to know it, works in a similar manner, except now that it's a machine that is trying to be given that brain. And this has grown or has become very popular, I'd say, since September 30th, 2022. I'm curious if anybody knows what happened on that date. So that was the date one of the most, let me say, publicly known artificial intelligence solutions was put out to the public. It's called ChatGPT. Have any of you here heard of ChatGPT? Oh, wow. Yeah, so quite a number of people. So that was the date when that was launched and put out to the public. And it was the first time that the public or people were able to interact with artificial intelligence or a computer that was built and trained to think like a human or to try and think like a human and respond in a similar manner. So with that, I think over the last 3 years or so, we've seen a huge growth of AI in various aspects in society today. And particularly in the political landscape, in politics, there has been an upsurge or use of AI. One of the biggest ways in which AI has impacted or has grown is in the aspect of content generation. So back in the day, kama ulikuwa nataka I remember back when you were in high school and you needed to send a letter to a certain girl in a certain school, and you didn't have the right words. You didn't have the right English, the right Kiswahili. There was that poet in class. So you go, you give him your template. You give him, she's called this and this, she's in this and this sister school, and tell her that I like her. So now he will pick that information and he will write the most amazing letter of how the stars shining in her eyes and how when the moon shines, nothing is as bright as her smile. Hey, hadi unasoma what he has written for you, you're like, yes, this is, enyewe when you say. So in the same approach, AI has been used to create content, and that's what we call generative AI. So generative AI is the most, I'd say, common AI right now, which is being used to generate content. So you ask it a question or you give it some information and it's able to kind of write down or come up with content for you. Now, in today's landscape of politics in Africa and in Kenya, that basically means that there's a lot of content being created via AI. So we've gone through and said it can create content. That's the first thing. It's generative. And two, it's not a human who's creating this content. It's a trained machine that's been trained to create this content. So what does that lead to? It means, one, there are certain risks or certain things or considerations that have to be made when you are relating with content that has not necessarily been written or created by another fellow human being. And that's why one major aspect of AI, especially in the political landscape, has to do with misinformation. Basically, information that is not true or that is false or that is curated or written in such a very good way that it almost seems real. So that's one aspect in which AI is being used or might likely be used in politics. Both, and it's a double-edged sword. It has its good side. It can be used for good. So for example, creating videos about how you should vote. I saw a number of people voted in the last election. Public sensitization on why it's important to have peaceful elections, why your vote matters. That is amazing content, both in the form of video or images that is being generated by AI and that political parties, governments can be able to use to teach the public about AI. But then at the same time, it's a double-edged sword in that on the other side, kuna watu wenye who might want to use this for ill intent, create fake images. For example, I know sometime back there was a very viral fake image of the Pope wearing a very big hoodie. And a lot of people thought, oh wow, the Pope actually wears hoodies. And so that's the kind of content you have to be cautious of, especially as you go towards politics, as you go to in the politics space. And what we as leaders in the industry are looking to do is to help shape the right direction and to help shape the tool so that it's used in the right way.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for that, James. I'll also bring in Eric. Eric got in a bit late, so maybe you can take a minute to introduce yourself first so that the audience knows you, and then we go to the...
Okay, good morning. Still morning. Yeah, my name is Eric Mugendi. Uses digital and video content around investigations. And I also have experience as a fact checker and someone who's worked extensively in the information ecosystem, trying to make sure that the information that people are consuming is authentic, and then also working to teach people how to verify information for themselves. So that's media and information literacy. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Eric. So this session has been organized by the Youth Cafe, which is a leading Pan-African youth organization based here in Nairobi, in conjunction with ELOG, and ELOG stands for Election Observation Group. You may ask, why is ELOG interested in AI and big data? Why is the Youth Cafe interested in AI and big data? A majority of our population in Kenya, I might add 70% or thereabouts, are young people. And as technologies emerge, we are interested on how it can impact young people on one hand. And then secondly, as active citizens, how can these emerging technologies in big data and artificial intelligence shape our perspectives, opinions, or distort our thinking to make certain decisions based just on account of technology itself? Recently, I also heard that there was a video of the president speaking in French. Did anybody see that? Did you believe that he speaks French? So back to my my panel. For elections, what are the use cases, practical use cases that we can talk about in relation to artificial intelligence and election, both as a process and as an event? What should we be afraid of? What should we be optimistic about? Maybe I can go to Robin.
Fun fact, I was one of the, as you call them, poets who used to draft those notes, and the currency was a loaf of bread back in high school, so I'm glad it's still existing. So part of the use cases that I would say AI, when you consider it as a tool in reference to elections, would be, I would mention three. So let me start with micro-targeting. So with micro-targeting, unlike previously when you'd do like a survey which were quite general based on certain demographics, in this day and age, you are able to target an individual, meaning that you can be able to speak, you can be able to mention issues that actually align to different people in different capacities and be able to relate the core, for example, if it's about information about the core aspects that affect them within a certain area. You don't necessarily have to blanket that to different people. So in a political sphere, being able to have your message delivered is a core gain, because it means that there is a more informed population, there is a more active society in that sense. The second use case around politics that I think would be relevant would be, I would say, still in terms of incorporating, we've seen tools that allow you to check, for example, your polling stations. We've seen tools that show you who are the, if you live in a certain space, you know who is your ward representative or the candidates for that particular seat. If we go a step higher and incorporate aspects where we are able to interact with the resources that are available, so which means that you get to understand aspects on voting, you're able to understand issues that pertain you and how to address that. Most of us, I think I'd speak for most, a lot of our commitments and engagements towards civic is purely done and dusted once we vote. After that, it's usually complaints.
Follow-up comments, you can do that. And I want to thank you so much for being an engaged and active audience. I hope you have benefited from the conversation and from our wonderful set of panelists. Without much ado, I think we'll conclude the session and we let the other program take forward. At our booth, we had the young software engineer who is with the
and bashing what is happening. There is a lot more that you can be able to do beyond that. There is lobbies, there is accountability, what are they called, forums and the likes. So there's usually more that you can do beyond just casting your vote. And that is something that I feel like if you are able to expose and use AI as a tool in terms of engaging, if it's, for example, somebody who's just a young voter, it can be quite daunting in the sense that I have just one vote in a multitude that is 50-something million. How does this contribute? It becomes, in our earlier conversation, there's that insight that I got from you about a drop that causes the flood. So being able to engage an individual from that point is something that we feel could be a very good use case, in the sense that you can walk with a voter all through, should I say, the civic journey, in the sense that it's not just about the election, it's just everything around governance. It's everything about what are your roles and responsibilities that you can do. The third one, I think, would be about, in the sense about advertisements. There's a lot of, I would say, grayness towards regulations, towards political advertisements. But Eric has done a lot of work to do with fact-checking, and I don't think it's humanly possible for moderators to be able to flag each and every post that you do. We have a very youthful population, and that means a lot of them are also tech savvy. We have a good penetration as a country, internet penetration in that sense. So what goes online is quite vast in that regard, and for you to be able to pinpoint each and every misleading information could be it's a big of a task. But how AI has been able to help them and support them in that space has been they've trained certain models to be able to understand what kind of information is, for example, propagating things like hate speech. What kind of conversations might be demeaning in terms of towards gender issues? What other conversations might be radicalizing or polarizing information? So being able to flag that, then the human fact checkers now come on board and verify that information. You see, there's a lot of workload that has already been covered for them, and by incorporating that human and AI element in this regard means that there's a lot of facilitations towards how effective this work can be done. I've worked a lot around the space of disinformation and misinformation to that regard. So how I could put it in a simpler language is in the sense of how you are able to influence people's opinions through the kind of content they get to consume. You are able to model the kind of exposure that people have. Now, working backwards towards that, it means that there's a lot of sanitization once you are able to incorporate humans who are able to get context in terms of language. So AI can flag, for example, you're just chatting with a friend or posting something that you find interesting, but based on the context within which these models have been trained, it can be flagged as offensive. So that's where the human element comes in. And by incorporating that, there's a lot of work that has been done that facilitates now the humans who are working within this kind of a space to be able to produce more, to be able to work more, and also be able to expound and train models in terms of how the online space keeps shifting. So those are some of the use cases that I think I would flag, at least for now.
Thanks so much, Robin. We'll have sessions for you to chime in. You know, misinformation also targeted at young people. And for us, as a youth organizations, we are also very, here we are very, very young people. Some are in high schools. I'm sure a number of them have come across misinformation that are generated perhaps by artificial intelligence, either knowingly or unknowingly. So, you know, in terms of consumptions, the demographic becomes the highest consumers of you know, this targeted content, which might be falsified or wrong. So how can we protect, particularly our young people? How can we raise a generation of critical thinkers? You know, you are a fact checker, but youth don't have time to do fact checking before they read a message on WhatsApp or on Twitter. So what can young people do, and how can we protect?
I think just looking at the work of fact checking itself, it's very labor intensive. It's a lot of work to go into these spaces where conversations are happening, and then identifying the information people are consuming, and then doing your own research as a fact checker to establish the authenticity of this information. So that's where doing things like a trend analysis about what kinds of information people are consuming is really important. And for a lot of young people coming into these digital spaces as essentially digital natives, people who have been using these technologies from a very young age, you would assume that they would be extra vigilant because they know exactly how these platforms work. It's not like our parents who will see a video making certain claims, like the one where they're like Ruto is speaking French, and they'll believe it because it has a certain appearance, so it looks like a news production or something like that. But the emerging danger is things like virtual influencers and like micro-influencers who are able to identify like a person's interest based on their internet history or the type of content they consume. And this is happening on platforms like TikTok, where there's an algorithm behind the scenes that is surfacing content for you to see based on what you've watched previously. So the way misinformation and disinformation are manifesting for young people is very different from older generations. So there's a need for much more nuanced information literacy. So your first assumption as someone who is consuming content online is that the content you are consuming may not be authentic. It may not be from the source that it claims to be from, because a lot of times you find that the there's this creation of authenticity where people will create content that looks like it's from a certain brand. They'll probably put a logo belonging to a news organization if it's news content, or they'll use someone's face. Now we're getting to a point where deepfakes are so convincing that you can get just a single image of someone and then use that as a basis to generate a video, and then you use a sample of their voice as the basis for which you can create audio that goes along with that video. So it's not that everything we consume is false, but it's that there's a very high likelihood that they'll use this type of content to try to convince you about certain things. So the things to look out for are content that tries to get you to react or to respond in a certain way. If it has like a call to action, if it tells you, share this with all your friends because if you don't, something will happen, or something that has, it's trying to create, like, to elicit an emotional response. And you saw this in some of the work that we did around the past election, around hate speech. So one of the things that people like the National Cohesion and Integration Commission are doing is identifying certain keywords that are likely to be used in hateful content. And that becomes the basis for a lexicon, which is essentially a collection of words that is used as a way to identify potentially hateful content. So you listen to things like if people are being dehumanized or referred to as animals in a particular way, and things like those. So previously, this was a really strong indicator that content is likely to be hateful. But now, we're seeing a situation where this type of content is being produced at such a massive scale because you can deploy bots that will just start with those keywords, and then they'll start generating their own content, and then this content is being shared by bots on social media, and then they hijack trending topics to make the content more visible, and then it becomes like a perpetual cycle where this content is informing new content, and then you keep seeing things. And then one of the things that this type of content aims to accomplish is to make people feel disillusioned. So to make people feel like there's no point to be engaged in politics or in the political process because of the fact that nothing you do is going to change anything. Nothing you do is going to be significant enough to change a status quo. So that type of emotional response is something that's very easy to generate based on existing content. So we need to be extra vigilant when this content is trying to appeal to you in either a positive way to get you to act in a certain way, or in a negative way to try to get you to not act. So not going to vote, not engaging with politicians, or not trying to fight corruption. Essentially trying to tell people that whatever you do, you've already lost. And then the other thing is, when we're in these spaces, these platforms where this content is being shared, I'm talking about those WhatsApp groups you're in with your aunties who will tell you there's the heat is because the sun is coming closer to the earth, that type of thing. So these types of things tend to be very prevalent in these spaces because you have people from lots of different backgrounds with lots of different varying levels of information literacy. So it's really important to essentially train ourselves to respond or to identify this type of content, and to do it gently. Don't attack the people spreading this type of information, because everything in this ecosystem, in this space, is a learning process. So look out for things that are trying to get you to act or to not act. Look out for things that are trying to get you to distrust institutions. So if you're distrusting, say, like the Electoral Commission, if you're distrusting the people in charge of the election process, that becomes the basis to tell you, oh, we need to go and we need to protest, we need to do certain things. And that might be content that's being generated using AI. And then it's just looking out for content that is also designed to get us to lose focus as a distraction, trying to get us to not kind of focus on the issues at hand, because we feel that there's no point engaging in this political process. Let's focus on entertainment and celebrities instead. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting the moderator and the panelists.
A knife is neither good or bad. It's only in whose hand is the knife in. If the knife is in the hand of a killer, then the knife is bad. If the knife is in the hands of a chef, then the knife is good. So AI on this the way to understand it is that AI is neutral. It can be used for good, that's it can be used for civic education, to give you good information, but it can also be used for propaganda, for deception, for lying, for inciting you, for telling you things that don't exist. For example, what my colleagues were describing here called the deep fake, where you take someone else and then you impersonate them and give them the message and communicate and lie to people. Now, what can we do about that? Human beings will not stop lying to each other. You lie, either as an individual or as a group interest, you lie. So what do we do? What I want to ask you, one, as my colleague here said, you should always doubt. The first thing is to doubt and then verify. Not to agree and then verify much later when the damage is done. The second thing that I want to ask you, as we had described AI, we say that AI is just an imitation of us, how we consume information from our eyes, our ears, from our mouth, from our skin, the 5 senses that nature gave us or God gave us. That's how we consume information. Now, with that information, AI cannot get to you unless it's passing through your 5 senses. Now, I want to ask you, your head is not a decoration, or it's not weight that God burdened you to carry for as a punishment. Your head contains brain, your brain contains mind, and the mind's job is to be able to sift information that you receive from your environment. That information could be artificial, like from AI, the deep fakes, or from another individual like the majority leader here, telling you things that you manifestly know they are not true, but you go along. The problem with pretending is that whether you are sincerely ignorant or you know that you're doing something wrong, the consequences are usually the same. Being sincerely ignorant does not save you from the consequence of misinformation, disinformation. So what should we do? 1, doubt. 2, make use of your mind. Always try to fact check, and that's the responsibility is on you. The responsibility is not on the political party, it's not on the youth cafe, it's not on your mother, it's not on your neighbor. The responsibility lies with you because you carry a head. The head has a brain. The brain is for thinking and making sense. And since you are a human being, the difference between us and animals and a dog is that we can think about information we receive, turn it into knowledge, and then use that knowledge to act. So, in terms of ethics of AI, there are suggestions. And those suggestions are just suggestions. They are called principles. We are told that AI should be private, should allow us to have some privacy, should be transparent, should be accountable, should be accurate, should be fair. But the question you need to ask yourself as an individual is, these suggestions, unless they are turned into law, they remain suggestions. And that's why you see after elections, we go to court and you can see lawyers turning around those principles, those suggestions, and spinning them around and saying there's no law. Now, do you think your member of parliament or even your president is interested in passing laws that would make it difficult for you to be lied to? I don't think so, because it's in their interest to lie to you. It's in their interest to lie to you because individuals influence individuals, either as a group or as an individual. Now, what we need to do is for you to make political necessity that this lying must stop. And how does it stop? You have to become smarter. How do you become smarter? You have to do what my colleague said here, always doubt, fact check. Then AI in that environment will just be neutral. Will be like a knife in the kitchen. It's just a technology. It's not bad. It's not good. It can be used for good things or for bad things. WhatsApp message still uses AI. You can use it to lie to your girlfriend, and you can also use it to tell the truth, right? The WhatsApp is not a problem. You can watch good videos, and you can also watch bad videos. The technology that gives you that is not the problem. So I think, moderator, that's my contribution on that. I know we don't have time. Let me allow other people to speak.
Thank you so much for that. And James, this is with regards to key institutions that oversee elections, such as election management bodies, or political parties, or youth groups like ourselves. how can we leverage, on the technology, looking at the good sides, because it is already here with us, and what can we do in practical sense, such that in future we can have, for instance, more young people educated through the technologies to vote or to exercise their civic responsibilities, as well as less instances of it being used by malign actors.
I think one of the ways in which different stakeholders can play a part, I always say, is trust the experts. We are here on this board because we are industry experts in that particular domain. And one great thing about the universe is that each individual person has their talent, what they are good at, and what they have learned either from school or from experience. And so you should always be willing, one, to learn. Understanding that you do not know everything is the first step of learning. And open up your ideas as different stakeholders, for example, as electoral bodies. How do you talk to industry experts? How do you bring them as part of the conversation? As political parties themselves, how can you start leveraging this technology from people who have a proven track record of creating solutions that are for the better good and for the betterment of society? And one of the things that is very, very common these days is you have a lot of people who put up the facade or put up the persona that we can be able to help you with 1, 2, 3, 4. But in reality, you find that when put to the task, the actual deliverability is where the problem comes in. So one, how can, for example, political parties start utilizing people to, one, create AI-geared solutions that help in things like campaign financing? You look at even how we've structured our political kind of system. We call it a political system, but when you look at from a technical point, the definition of what a system is, you realize it's not a system per se, because the system has certain structures. It has certain inputs and gives certain outputs and has certain expected outcomes. So the first aspect in which I feel AI can really help a lot in the political landscape is creating those structures. When you look at campaign financing, when you look at aspects of election fraud detection and prevention, even how we do tallying, from a political party point, there's a lot of manual involvement, there's a lot of manual intervention, and the challenge with that is it raises a possibility of influence or manipulation. So one, is it from how data is relayed? I think one of the things that I can say was really impressive with the last election was it was one of the first elections where there was a real-time relay of the results from ground. So if we can take it a step further to kind of help bring in AI. I know, for example, in the US, when they're doing their elections, and you have the different parties, the Republicans, the Democrats, they usually do forecasting. They know, for example, the state of Minnesota or Wisconsin is likely to vote blue, Texas likely to vote red, based on historical patterns. That's also another key aspect that AI can be able to help in terms of, can we, as industry experts, build solutions that can look at previous voting historical patterns and say, for example, we see that a lot of people in XYZ region like Lamu or Kilifi did not turn up to vote compared to previous years. Can we focus more on civic education in those particular areas? And all these are decisions that are informed, that are actually not made up, but actually come from solutions that are built. And I'm excited to be part of a great team who are starting to build those solutions, because I feel that is what can help address some of the consequences of what we see, like voting towards ethnic lines. I view those as consequences of not having proper structures and systems. And I feel that guiding and helping political parties across the board without any bias, whether it's UDA, Kenya Kwanza, how can I come in as an industry expert and help your political party create the structures, utilize AI and technology to be able to help not only your voters vote, but to be able to have representation as well.
Thank you so much for that, James. Follow-up comments, you can do that. And I want to thank you so much for being an engaged and active audience. I hope you have benefited from the conversation and from our wonderful set of panelists. Without much ado, I think we'll conclude the session.